Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be discussing John List and the List family murders. Before I begin, I just would like to make a disclaimer that I mean no disrespect to anyone that I discuss in this video, and it is strictly for educational purposes. John List was born September 17, 1925 in Bay City, Michigan. He was the only child of two very strict German parents, and he was very religious. They were Lutheran, to be exact. His father was a Sunday school teacher, and he later on became a Sunday school teacher as well. So a little later on in his life, John List was enlisted into the U.S. Army as a lab tech in World War II. After the Army, he went on to school to get his bachelor's degree at the University of Michigan in business administration, and then got his master's degree in accounting. During college, he was commissioned second lieutenant with ROTC, and he was called in 1950 into active service in Virginia, where he met his wife, Helen Morris Taylor. Helen had lied to John, stating that she was pregnant, so John then proposed to her, and they got married on December 1st, 1951. Helen, John's wife, was born January 1st, 1925 in North Carolina, but then eventually moved to New Jersey with John in Westfield. After many moves from the military and job changes to the finance corp, they moved into New Jersey with his mother into a 19-room Victorian mansion on 431 Hillside Avenue. He had struggled with maintaining his jobs, and his coworkers often said that John was difficult and off-putting, and there was something just not right about him. John and Helen had 3 children, Patricia, John Jr., and Frederick List. In the late 60s, Patricia, when she was a teenager, she decided that she wanted to become an actress, and John started to have concerns about the morality of his family. He did not agree with Patricia going into the field of becoming an actor. He thought that was not okay. When the kids started to get older, Helen, John's wife, became very unstable. In her first marriage, she had obtained tertiary syphilis from her first husband, and she ended up self-medicating because she blacked out. She had dizzy spells with alcohol, in addition to her prescription tranquilizers, so you can imagine what she was going through at that time. And she ended up stopping attending church. Eventually, John lost his job at the bank and lied to his family. He would even pretend to go to work every day, dressing up and leaving the house and coming back. He resorted to stealing money from his mother, Alma. Alma lived upstairs in her own apartment in the 19-room Victorian mansion. But by 1971, John List had become bankrupt, and nobody knew about it. He did not like the humiliation, and he did not want to admit to his family that they were broke. The only option in his mind was to kill his family so that they could be sent to heaven while they were still pure. According to John, poverty was a sin and did not want his family living in poverty. So on November 9th, 1971, he woke up as normal, ate breakfast with his kids, sent them to school. And after he sent his kids to school, Helen was finishing her coffee, and John shot her in the back of the head. And he moved her to the ballroom and placed her on a sleeping bag. He then went upstairs to his mother Alma's apartment, and while he was in there, she was finishing up her breakfast as well, and he shot her after she asked what that noise was downstairs, and I'm assuming she became suspicious. He was going to place his mother Alma in the ballroom with his wife, but decided that she was too heavy, could not move her down the stairs, and just placed a towel over her head where she'd fallen. While John waited for all of the kids to come home from school, in his plan to murder them as well, he cleaned up the home and called their school, letting them know that they would not be attending school for a while because of a death in the family. He then went to the post office and stopped their mail and newspaper and cashed out the rest of his mother's money at the bank. Patricia was the first one to return home from school. He shot and killed her and placed her in the ballroom next to her mother on a sleeping bag. And then he did the same exact thing to Frederick, shot and killed him when he came home, and placed him next to her sister and his mother. After that, John decided to attend his middle son John Jr.'s soccer game. So he did that and drove him home and did the same thing, shot him, but the first shot did not work. He saw John Jr. moving, so he decided to shoot him 9 more times. The murders, Helen, John's wife, was 45, Patricia was 16, John Jr. was 15, Frederick was 13, and Alma was 84. And moving him to the ballroom and placing him on a sleeping bag with the rest of the family. He then ate dinner in the same room that his whole family was laying in and went to bed after he had done the dishes. I think that is insane. I don't know how you can possibly eat. I was watching a documentary and they said he may have been able to eat because he did this in the war. He went and shot people, killed people, and then ate. But I don't know. The next day, John turned down the air conditioning to preserve the bodies, turned on classical music, and turned on every light in the house, and wrote a full-on confession letter to his pastor and left town. Over a month later, no one had realized that the families were gone. Patricia's drama teacher, though, became suspicious and decided to do her own little investigation. Her and another person went to the house, and the neighbors saw them creeping around and called the police. Officers arrived at the scene and decided to enter the house, and they found the partially decomposed bodies of all of the List family, excluding John. And at first, the officers that arrived on the scene thought it could have been a mass murder or a mass suicide. They weren't sure what they found until they found John's confession letter. And in the letter, it stated that the mother was upstairs, and then they went and found the mother, Alma, in the apartment above, and immediately started the investigation. But John had had a head start of over a month, so he was gone, and his trails were sealed. No one could find him. He had been gone for over a month. He had the biggest head start they'd ever seen. But before leaving, John destroyed every single photo of himself, parked his car at the JFK airport in New York City, and took a bus down to Denver, Colorado. He had previously lived in a motel there where he changed his name to Robert or Bob Clark and married Dolores Miller, who had no idea of his previous identity. Fast forward 18 years later, and still no one has heard or seen of John List. He has been out of the blue, and he had even moved to Virginia because still, like he had previously, could not maintain a job. So he was going back and forth between jobs, same thing, still in the accounting business firm, working with banks. 18 years later, John Walsh's show, America's Most Wanted, became one of the most hit shows on TV. Everyone was watching it, and it had millions and millions of viewers every night. He had heard of the List family killings and was determined to help find John List. He reached out to a forensic sculptor named Frank Bender, who created a model of what John could look like nowadays. And on May 29, 1989, they aired the episode of America's Most Wanted. And in an interview, John List actually said he watched the episode because he loved America's Most Wanted. And he would always tell his friends to go watch it. He thought it was the best show ever, and he kind of wondered in the back of his head if they would ever play his case, but he wasn't sure. And then one day, sure enough, his episode came on, and someone named Wanda Flannery, who was Bob Clark's neighbor in Colorado, recognized him and immediately called in the tip. So John List was caught and found, but he didn't give up his identity right away. He was like saying, no, I'm Robert Clark, I'm not John List, and they ended up getting his fingerprints, and it was a match that he was John List, so he couldn't really say it anymore. And he ended up receiving 5 life sentences. Trial. John List's attorneys tried to claim that it was his OCD that made him commit the murders and that his mental illness was the cause of the murders. And the judge wanted none of it. She knew first degree. The jury even knew first degree. They came back with the 5 life sentences immediately, to no surprise. He died in prison from pneumonia on March 21st, 2008. So he didn't really even serve that long, which is so sad. He was gone on the run for 18 years and barely got to serve anything. It's a tragedy of a case. After their deaths, there was a fire about a month later in their house. The stained glass window that they had in their house was a Tiffany's original, and it was worth over $100,000, which could have erased their debt and even potentially saved the whole family's lives, which is crazy to think about. John List didn't even think to sell anything or move out of his Victorian house. He just straight up killed his family to save their souls from going to hell. I am happy that we got justice, and John List did get locked up even though he didn't really serve that long. We do have semi-justice for finding him even though it was 18 years later. We still got him. That's really it for this case. If you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.